3 private jets. A personal airport in Fort Worth, Texas. Tale number 4T2. Sitting on a 33-acre ministry campus. A Gulfstream 5 purchased from Tyler Perry. A Citation X for international travel. A Citation Bravo for domestic flights. A net worth estimated by multiple outlets at somewhere between $300 million and $760 million. And in May 2026, with everything that has been happening in Christian broadcasting, with Daystar in crisis, with accountability questions at the forefront of every conversation about televangelist ministry, Kenneth Copeland sat down on a podcast with his granddaughter and said this about the people criticizing him. "I don't listen to the praise. I don't listen to the hate. I just keep my head down and do my job." The controversy around Kenneth Copeland's jets has never fully gone away. But in the current moment, when the Christian media world is being forced to reckon with exactly the kinds of financial opacity and accountability failures that have defined Copeland's ministry for decades, it has taken on a new and more urgent dimension. Today we are going through the complete documented record. Every jet, every controversy, every statement, and the question that the current moment in Christian broadcasting is forcing the church to finally ask out loud. The fleet, what he actually owns. Start with the facts, because the facts are remarkable enough on their own. Kenneth Copeland Ministries operates 3 aircraft out of Kenneth Copeland Airport, a private airstrip the ministry owns on its 33-acre campus near Fort Worth, Texas. The campus was once Marine Corps Air Station Eagle Mountain Lake. The flagship aircraft is a Gulfstream 5, tail number N652CK, purchased from filmmaker Tyler Perry in late 2017 and finalized in January 2018. The aircraft was listed at approximately $5.9 million at purchase and received a further $2.5 million in upgrades after acquisition. The second aircraft is a Cessna 750 Citation X, used for international flights. The third is a 1998 Cessna 550 Citation Bravo, received as a gift from a donor, used for domestic travel. In 2018, Kenneth Copeland Ministries also acquired a 1962 Beech H-18 Twin, which the ministry said it planned to restore for disaster relief efforts. 3 active aircraft. A private airport. A facility that once hosted United States Marine Corps aviation operations. Kenneth Copeland has been a licensed commercial pilot since long before his ministry reached its current scale. Aviation is not simply a convenience for him. By his own account, it has been part of his life since childhood. He grew up near a military airfield in Lubbock, Texas, learned to fly as a young man, and worked as a co-pilot to help pay for his education. That personal connection to flying does not, of course, resolve the accountability questions around how ministry funds have been used to build and maintain a fleet of this scale. But it is part of understanding why the jets have remained so central to his identity and his public positioning. The interview that changed everything. On May 20th, 2019, on a segment that aired first on Inside Edition and then went viral across every platform, correspondent Lisa Guerrero approached Copeland at a private airport in Branson, Missouri, and asked him, directly, why he could not fly commercial. His answer: "If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing." When she pressed him about the Gulfstream 5 he had purchased from Tyler Perry, he responded, "That's none of your business," then added that Perry had made it so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it. But the line that went viral, the one that has been played back millions of times and that Copeland is still addressing in podcasts in 2026, came from a 2015 conversation he had with fellow televangelist Jesse Duplantis. In that exchange, Copeland described commercial aviation as flying in a long tube with a bunch of demons. When Guerrero asked him about that comment, Copeland denied it, then explained it. "It's a spiritual thing," he said. "It doesn't have anything to do with people." He then grabbed her hand and prayed for her on camera. The interview was a masterclass in how not to manage a public accountability moment. Every answer generated a new headline. The journalist wanted Copeland to explain a comment he made in 2015 when he described flying commercial as flying in a long tube with a bunch of demons, and it's deadly. His denial, his explanation, and his subsequent prayer for the reporter, who had been asking him difficult questions, all became part of the viral moment. The Senate investigation and why it matters. The jet controversy did not begin with the Inside Edition interview. It began years earlier with a Senate Finance Committee investigation. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa opened an inquiry into 6 major televangelist ministries in 2007, specifically targeting their use of tax-exempt funds and their compliance with IRS regulations around private benefit. Kenneth Copeland Ministries was one of the 6. KCM was among 4 of the 6 ministries that did not fully cooperate with the Senate inquiry. The investigation did not conclude that Copeland had done anything illegal, but it produced a documented finding that matters enormously in understanding the broader accountability context. KCM has been criticized for its use of private aircraft. The Copeland's financial records and a list of KCM's board of directors are not publicly available. The information is held in confidence by the Internal Revenue Service. This is the structural reality that sits underneath every specific controversy about the jets. Kenneth Copeland Ministries does not publicly disclose its financial records. Its board composition is not public. The donors who give to this ministry have no way to independently verify from public documents how their contributions are being used. In December 2008, KCM's Citation Bravo was denied tax exemption by a Texas county after KCM refused to submit a standard form that would have required disclosing staff salaries. The pattern is consistent. An institution that has consistently chosen opacity over transparency at every point where disclosure was optional. The Africa Plane Promise and what happened to it. One of the most specific accountability questions in Copeland's documented history involves a promise he made about an airplane he was going to donate to a ministry in Africa. The promise was made publicly. The plane was not sent. According to Copeland, the aircraft had severe corrosion issues that could not be safely repaired overseas. "Well, certainly I reneged on it," Copeland said. "Not going to send something unsafe to somebody in Africa someplace." He addressed this on his May 2026 podcast with his granddaughter Courtney, still defending the decision, still presenting it as a matter of safety rather than accountability. The story of the Africa plane matters not because the explanation is necessarily wrong. Corroded aircraft are genuinely dangerous, but because of what it illustrates about the pattern. A public commitment made. A public commitment not kept. An explanation offered years later on a friendly platform to a family member who asked no difficult follow-up questions. The $6.3 million mansion and the tax exemption. The jet controversy cannot be understood in isolation from the broader financial picture of Kenneth Copeland Ministries. Copeland's use of private jets, luxury cars, and lavish houses has been widely criticized, having been featured on a 2015 episode of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, where John Oliver criticized the Copelands for using tax laws to live in a $6.3 million mansion, as the parsonage allowance for their home is not subject to income taxes, for using church donations to buy a $20 million jet that was used for trips to a ski resort and a private game ranch. The parsonage allowance is a provision in U.S. tax law that allows clergy to exclude from taxable income the amount used to provide a home. There is no statutory cap on the size or value of that home. Kenneth Copeland has used this provision to live in a $6.3 million mansion without paying income tax on the funds used to maintain it. This is legal. It is also the kind of arrangement that, in the current moment of scrutiny around Christian media finances, raises questions that go beyond legality to something about institutional values. A pastor who preaches that financial blessing is the evidence of God's favor, who lives in a $6.3 million home as a tax-exempt parsonage, who owns 3 private jets funded in part by donor contributions, who flies to ski resorts and private game ranches on ministry aircraft, and who tells the reporter questioning him about all of it that it is none of her business, is making a statement about accountability whether he intends to or not. The May 2026 podcast, and what he said. In May 2026, weeks after Joni Lamb's death had placed Christian media accountability at the forefront of public conversation, Kenneth Copeland appeared on a podcast with his granddaughter Courtney, speaking candidly about online criticism and the infamous Inside Edition interview. "I don't listen to the praise, I don't listen to the hate, I just keep my head down and do my job," Copeland said. Courtney defended her grandfather's demanding ministry schedule and global travel obligations, noting that Kenneth Copeland Ministries now operates on 5 continents worldwide. "In order to do what God's called you to do, it was the only way that makes sense," she said. Much of the conversation ultimately turned toward faith, prosperity, and what Copeland believes many Christians misunderstand about God's nature. He argued that too many churches emphasize suffering and curses rather than biblical blessings. So many preachers have preached on the curse instead of the blessing, Copeland said. God is a good God. The interview was notable for what it was. A man in his late 80s, still defending the same positions he has held for decades, in a format, a family podcast, that guaranteed no difficult questions. The Inside Edition reporter asked hard questions in an airport parking lot and got answers that went viral for all the wrong reasons. His granddaughter asked comfortable questions in a studio and got answers that confirmed his existing positions. The choice of platform tells you something about how Kenneth Copeland understands accountability in 2026. Why this moment is different. Here is the question worth sitting with. Why does this matter now, in mid-2026, more than it did in 2019 when the viral interview happened? Because the context has changed. Joni Lamb just died, leaving behind an institution in crisis. One that reached 2 billion homes while concealing a terminal cancer diagnosis from the donors who sustained it, while managing family abuse allegations with NDAs and GPS trackers, while refusing a longtime donor's request for a refund. Joyce Meyer, Greg Laurie, Jack Hibbs, and more than 30 other ministry partners left Daystar over the past 2 years, specifically because they believed the accountability failures there were too serious to remain associated with. And Kenneth Copeland? Daystar's current programming lineup includes televangelists living extravagantly such as Rod Parsley and Creflo Dollar, as well as the deceased Bible prophecy teacher Hal Lindsey. Copeland's ministry remains on the air at Daystar, the same institution whose governance failures have been the subject of sustained investigative journalism for 2 years, continues to broadcast Copeland's prosperity gospel to the viewers it has retained. This is the ecosystem. Not one ministry, not one jet, not one viral interview. A network of interconnected institutions, each shielded from financial disclosure by church status, each presenting prosperity and blessing as the evidence of divine favor, each managing accountability questions with the same combination of denial, legal opacity, and friendly interviews. Kenneth Copeland's jets are the most visible symbol of that ecosystem. They always have been. What has changed in 2026 is that the accountability failures underneath the symbol are no longer something the church can plausibly pretend not to see. That is the complete documented picture, from the private airport in Fort Worth to the May 2026 podcast, from the Senate investigation to the Africa plane that never arrived. Here is the question I want to put to this community. When a pastor uses the language of blessing and prosperity to justify a lifestyle built on donor contributions and tax exemptions, and continues to do so in 2026 after everything the Christian media world has been forced to reckon with, what is the appropriate response from the people in the pews? Drop your honest thoughts below. I read every comment, and this community always brings the sharpest analysis. Subscribe if you are not already. Turn on notifications. This story, the full story of accountability in Christian broadcasting, is not finished. And when the next chapter arrives, you will want to be here. Thank you for watching. Stay discerning.